So while there was the development of metaphysics for Neo-Confucianism, one constant was this focus on human relations. And each human relationship that was focused on was paired with a virtue. So for the Neo-Confucians, as well as Confucians in general, there were five ethical norms. There's five ethical norms. The first is righteousness between ruler and subject. There's the ruler, there's the subject. Notice it's clear who's in charge, who is bigger, right? And the king is, you'll notice, is very informal. He's kind of laughing, whereas the subject, it has his head bowed. The second is closeness between parents and children. And again, you'll notice one thing I think is fascinating about this comic. You'll notice that there's always someone who is kind of a little bit above and the others. Like here, the center of the picture is clearly the father. He's the active one. The woman's kind of, the mother, his wife, is kind of sitting back, and there's the kid who's happy. They're clearly sharing a moment together, but even in this moment, there is hierarchy. Differentiation between husbands and wives. So here you can see the woman, the wife here, preparing the food while her husband is studying. Right? Each one has their own job to do. And again, I think it's fascinating that even though the woman is the center of the picture, the guy is still above her. Right? And you can see how this would cause, if you're looking at this from a feminist perspective, this is really problematic because not only are you saying that because there's this differentiation, you can't really have equality. Right? Husbands and wives have fundamentally different jobs. We'll talk more about this later, but the man's job is to be the outside person, the person who deals with the outside world. His job to study or to work outside the home in some ways, whereas the woman's job is to take care of the home. And remember, this is understood as a fundamental law of the universe. So you can't change that, right? You can't change that. So naturally, you're not going to have a lot of feminism in this time period. And you're not going to have notions of equality for women, in a large part because you don't have notions of equality for anyone. As you can see, like I said, in all these relationships, someone is above, someone is below. Harmony between elders and juniors. So again, you can see this man is very informal. He's kind of laughing in front of these children, right? And he's, again, the center there below. And one thing to give you an example of how this works, even today, I think, you wouldn't smoke. If you smoke, you would not, and you're younger, you would not smoke in front of your senior typically. That would be rude. And this is going back a few decades, but I remember one of my professors who taught me Korean folklore, this is back in, I think, the 1960s, he was walking with an old man, and they were walking kind of fast, and the old man said, "Oh, we better slow down because there's a couple of young people up ahead and they're smoking, and if I get too close to them, they'll have to stop smoking, and they're having a good time. I don't want to make them stop smoking." And even another rule would be, for example, if you're drinking alcohol with an elder, you would usually kind of turn your head when you drink to show respect. And then finally, faith and trust between friends. And you've got the two friends here, and they are laughing. They're having a good time. They've got their arms together. They're faithful. They trust each other. But you'll notice again, one of them, this guy, is clearly taller. There's still hierarchy even among friends, right? You can't escape hierarchy, and you can kind of, I think, see the Confucian impact still in Korea today, because this is a modern, like, Korean textbook that's explaining these virtues, and it's presenting them in a nice way, maybe except for this one, because this woman looks kind of tired, but for the rest, it's presented as kind of a good thing. So these are still very much there, and there's always a hierarchy. Incidentally, the word here to talk about trust is how the word faith is presented. So in a sense that if you're thinking from a religious perspective, the faith and trust you have for a friend is similar to what you would have with God, though of course the hierarchy is a lot stronger there. So we have here then a social order based on hierarchy and patriarchy, right? This is a social order based on a hierarchy. Some people are above other people. And typically there is also patriarchy. Men are above women. You'll notice that in all these images, men are dominant, and there's no one, except for the mother, which makes things complicated. It's always the women are kind of in the background, the men are the center, they're the ones on top. So it's hierarchical and patriarchal. And this is reflected a lot of times in language, right? Language will reinforce this, and it will reinforce status. So let me give you kind of a comic to explain this. So this is funny. What's going on here is this is a father and this is his daughter, and the father says, "Hey, you know, come here and give me a bit of a massage my shoulders," and then she says, "No, I don't want to," and he says, "Hey, don't you know about the three bonds and the five relationships? Children are supposed to serve their. Those say that children should serve their parents." And she says, but parents are also supposed to treat their children with benevolence. And he's hitting his daughter over the head. This is kind of Korean humor. If you watch Korean dramas and things, they're always beating each other up. It's kind of curious. It's like watching old Warner Brothers cartoon. So you can see here, there's this idea of status, right? That the father can say to his daughter, you know, hey, you got to give me a massage, and if she refuses to, she talks back. He's allowed to whack her. But one thing I think is interesting, and even though you don't know even if you can't read Korean, do notice one thing. Notice at the end of the sentence, there's this. This is pronounced yo. And there it appears again. This is one sentence, and it says yo again. Here, you'll notice it doesn't say yo, right? This is ra, which means an order. Chumuru kora means like give me a massage. And I'm not sure exactly what this means, to be honest. But it's just informal talk. But the girl adds yo, and yo is polite. So what's interesting is that she still has to be polite to her father even when they're having an argument. He's able to use this very informal style of speech whereas she has to be polite even when she's arguing. And it's kind of funny if you look at this is how this works. So this is so deeply ingrained, this kind of hierarchy, that affects how you speak. And of course, that's going to impact how you see the world. And Koreans do this unconsciously even today. They know what kind of speech style they should use in what kind of situation. And so unconsciously impacts them, because in each situation they have to figure out who's hierarchical, who's the 윗사람, who's the 아랫사람, who's the person on top, who's the person below. They do this automatically. They especially did it in this time period. And it's really fascinating because there's different words for like to sleep, or to eat. So for example, if I eat, I 먹다. But if there's someone, like if I want to offer you food, I would say like, 음식을 드릴까요? I use a different word like durida, which is like offering you food. And then if my grandfather eats, he chops sushi das. He uses a different verb. So there's a different verb to eat. In English, we use all three one verb, right? Eat. But if I use one word, if I want to describe someone I should be polite to eating, I use a different word. And if I want to really honor someone, I have a third word that I use. And all this Koreans can do unconsciously without thinking of it. So you can see how this language forms this kind of hierarchical status system and reinforces it. Now, this isn't just in terms of this hierarchy doesn't just exist within the family, it doesn't just exist between men and women, it also helps determine class, your class status in society, and this is also connected to morality. So basically, you can kind of think about it this way. In Neo-Confucianism, performing rituals makes you more moral, so does studying Confucianism. Right? How do you become a more moral person? You study and you perform rituals. This is one reason in Korea why students are often respected. Like when I was a graduate student, I was treated with a lot more respect in Korea than I was in the United States. We kind of make fun of and look down on graduate students in Korea. There's a little bit more respect. And professors get a lot. I mean, they're respected in the United States. They're really respected in Korea. So there's this understanding in Neo-Confucian culture that studying and performing rituals makes you more moral, makes you a more moral person. And in Confucianism, Neo-Confucianism, remember the idea is to spread morality. So it makes sense that the most moral people should govern, right? The most moral people should govern. So who should govern? The most moral people. How do you become a moral person? By studying and performing rituals. So those people who are good at studying and performing rituals, they should govern. But the thing is, studying and ritual require time and money. Right? Rituals are not cheap to perform. You need good incense. You need all the different instruments you use, the utensils to perform the ritual. You need food. You need to feed the people who come there. You need to study to know how to perform the rituals. Books are expensive and are often copied by hand. So studying and ritual requires time and money. Only the wealthy could therefore afford rituals, the books, and the time to study. Right? Only really wealthy people can perform all the rituals. Like I said, ideally in Neo-Confucianism, when your parents die, you should mourn for 3 years, which means spending all this time at their grave and not working. Only really wealthy people can afford to take 3 years off and not work. So only the wealthy could afford these rituals, books, and time to study. Therefore, wealthy govern because they're the most moral. And I have 3 exclamation points because this is logical, but wow, does this kind of shock us perhaps today in the United States? But that was the idea. How do you become moral? By performing rituals and studying. Only people with money, though, can afford to do that. Only people with money can become moral. Therefore, the wealthy should govern because they are the most moral. That was kind of logic. And so you have this connection, this alignment in Korea between people who are believed to be moral, people who are performing these rituals, people who are wealthy, and people who are in government. And this will lead to a very fundamentally regressive tax structure. There's an argument that because the job of the government is to spread morality, and because it costs money to do that, and the government needs people who are moral to serve it, those people should not be taxed much or at all, because they need the money to perform these rituals and to study. So you're going to have a regressive tax structure. Basically, in Neo-Confucian Korea, the more money you have, the more wealth you have, the less you're taxed, because you need that money to perform ritual and to study, and in order to serve the government and help the government do its job of spreading morality. And in fact, even if you're not in the government, by performing these rituals, by encouraging morality, you are making a more moral society. So this is key also. The group of people who do this, even if they're not actively serving in government, they're understood to be supporting the government's civilizing mission, and therefore they're not taxed any or at all. Now, these values, Neo-Confucian values and rituals, will spread throughout society despite the class divisions. We're going to talk about some of the class divisions shortly, but these will spread despite class divisions. They'll jump across divisions, and maybe I should point out, it's not simply, it might be perhaps because of these class divisions, these rituals and values will spread, right? If you're someone that's lower class and you want people to respect you as higher class, you're going to imitate higher class people. So as much as possible, people below the very wealthy, especially if they're able to be good at trade or something to make money, will attempt to adopt Confucian rituals and Confucian virtues in order to try and rise up in status. Right, so this marks class difference, the people who can perform these rituals and the people who can't. However, people below will try and imitate them in order to gain status.